Hello and welcome. We appreciate you being here for the Partnering with School Systems webinar. Our focus is on improving our understanding of the culture of education's partners and agencies. And the content today is specifically geared for those working in Washington's substance use prevention, intervention, and other behavioral health service work. Today's webinar is scheduled for 1.5 hours. You'll have some interactive parts, including polls and the Q&A feature. Discussion time is scheduled for the last 15 minutes. So if you're wanting to collaborate with education partners, we hope that this webinar gives you context and helps support you in that effort. A quick note, we'd like to start by acknowledging that we're in very challenging times and experiencing a global pandemic takes a toll on all of us. We know it's hard to distance from loved ones and community, and it's hard to have so much uncertainty right now. So a big thank you for doing all that you can to keep you and yours well. COVID-19 is an unprecedented situation, so we're all working together to adjust for health reasons. Regarding education, OSPI's most current information related to COVID-19 response is provided on our website, and we wish everyone fortitude as we continue staying home to stay healthy. My name is Mandy Paradise. I work here at the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction as the Prevention Intervention Services Program Supervisor. A large part of my job is managing the Student Assistance Program and working with the state and ESD partners to promote student well-being. Later during our webinar, we will be joined by Joy Lyons, who is our guest presenter from ESD 112. Joy will be sharing a deeper dive into services that occur at the ESD level. Just another bit of background, and a dog barking, it's going to happen. For context, this webinar was developed as part of a feedback activity with the Community Prevention and Wellness Initiative Coalition coordinators. We learned that there is a strong desire for information on connecting to schools and especially on how to better partner together. The priorities that the coordinators identified, including a variety of things, really spoke to us for covering a couple key requests. One of which is to share more information about the roles and structure of OSPI and ESDs. We also learned that there's a large interest in hearing more about school policy considerations, so we've included that today as well. Briefly, here are the topics and flow for the day. We'll do a very light overview of education in Washington and an introduction to OSPI, followed by governance structures and the element of organizational culture. Then we will talk about policy considerations, which will be mainly explored through a tool, with things kind of coming together as tips and ponderings for your efforts. We'll bring it home by learning more about ESDs and getting to hear from our guest presenter, Joy, about the types of services that they run. And lastly, we will close with a conversation on application and answer questions you might have. So let's go ahead and get started. Our goal for today is about strengthening our understanding of OSPI and ESDs and their roles in Washington's educational system. Our guiding questions include, what is OSPI? What are ESDs? How might organizational cultures impact partnership and collaboration? And what practices should guide policy efforts aimed at educational systems or settings? In the closing portion of this webinar, we will ask you to share out. So please take notes as we move ahead and be prepared to share one big thing or one big takeaway. Now, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction is a state education agency charged with overseeing and supporting Washington's 295 public school districts and 7 state tribal compact schools. OSPI is Washington State's Department of Education. And we provide school districts with resources, funding, and best practice guidance to support students and educators. The big themes of our role include allocating funding, providing tools and resources to schools, providing technical assistance to districts, and supporting and creating policy. OSPI is guided by our vision, mission, and values. So let's briefly look at these, and then we're going to talk just a little about them. I know it's different, but we're actually going to start at the bottom and work our way to the top. So when we look at the values of OSPI, we see ensuring equity, collaboration and service, achieving excellence through continuous improvement, and focusing on the whole child. Our mission is to transform K-12 education to a system that is centered on closing opportunity gaps and is characterized by high expectations for all students and educators. We achieve this by developing equity-based policies and supports that empower educators, families, and communities. Lastly, let's look at our vision. So our vision is that all students are prepared for post-secondary pathways, careers, and civic engagement. I want to take a moment to unpack this vision. So what exactly does that mean? What are post-secondary pathways? It's basically getting kids ready for their life beyond school. It's like a training ground, right? Our whole goal in K-12 education is to help kids become better at adulting. It takes practice, as many of us know. So public education is determined through key legislation and honed practice. In Washington State, we are guided by the concept of basic education, as outlined in our CW. So this is the right of Washington students to receive knowledge and skills and to participate in a program of instruction that prepares them for life, that whole adulting thing. This includes things like reading, writing, and communication, mathematics, sciences, civics, history, and health, thinking analytically, using technology, and solving problems with reason. Lastly, engage in work and educational opportunities after school. So you can see the elements of basic education outlined in our Washington Learning Standards. Here you'll note that we have health and physical education learning standards that were revised in 2016. The standards are the ones that most align with our work in substance use prevention and intervention in terms of curriculum. This is important though, this might be a note you want to take. The standards are required, but adherence to any one specific curriculum or program is not mandatory nor promoted by OSPI. So schools have discretion regarding what tools and content they use for instruction. The learning standards are a tool teachers use, like a map, to guide instructional design, but they don't prescribe any specific program or curriculum. Now, let's talk about the many things that are top of mind for our schools. What are some of the things that you know schools stress about? In addition to our prevention and intervention work, schools have a lot to balance and implement. Quick, brief smattering of other things that schools have: contract negotiations, truancy supports, folks already said attendance. A newer item that we want to draw attention to is the 24-credit graduation, student well-being, 9th grade on track, closing achievement gaps, the TPEP, which is the Teacher Principal Evaluation Program, things that have to relate with facilities, discipline rules, educator well-being, class size, and the list could just go on and on. And in addition to content and subject matter in classrooms, and in addition to managing the school system, schools have yet another vital focus. They are the venue for helping youth learn to navigate life. So this concept is nicely summarized by the Harvard Center for the Developing Child. They present it as core life skills, basically the skills it takes to manage work and family and relationships successfully. It includes things like planning and focus, self-control, awareness, and flexibility. These concepts and skill sets are emphasized in social emotional learning, and they're embedded into classes across content focus areas. So they don't just happen in one place, they happen in everything. And they're tied to school culture and climate as well. So this again gets us back to that vision of K-12 education and the focus on adulting. OSPI is working to build the skills needed for post-secondary engagement, career engagement, and civic engagement. It's a whole person approach. Now, before we move on to our next segment, I'm going to quickly highlight the Student Assistance Prevention Intervention Services Program. Commonly, we refer to it as the Student Assistance Program. It's an OSPI program that promotes student well-being by improving behavioral health access and supports for students. So I want to showcase the student assistance as an example of where the field of education meets substance use prevention and intervention. The big takeaway here is that there are state-level programs created specifically for substance use prevention and intervention efforts, and they span really key areas related to information dissemination, prevention education, referral to supports. Our student assistance professionals and ESDs are also valuable partners to engage in when it comes to environmental strategy planning. So in short, the student assistance program reduces substance use among students, increases awareness and information for students and families, and increases capacity for school engagement. If you're interested in learning more about the student assistance programming, upcoming webinars and trainings are going to focus on that specifically. For now, though, we're going to change course just a bit and start talking about state-level systems and organizational structures. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how education systems and other state systems take shape. This segment is called The Governance Structure, How It All Connects. Our hope is for us to get a sense of the organizational cultures or agency cultures that are embedded into our shared work. First, we will look at two example health agencies in our state, the Healthcare Authority and the Department of Health. Just so you know, we're looking at them as a whole state agency, not just CPWI and not just MPEP efforts, but all that work and all the other work that also takes place at the agency. So let's note that the leadership for these agencies is appointed or selected by the Washington State Governor. When it comes to regional networks, we see many contractors supporting the implementation of agency services, as well as managed care organizations and local health jurisdictions. And at the local level, a variety of contracts exist to support the agency goals and work. MOUs also exist. But to recap, leadership at the state agencies are appointed, not elected. Partners span private organizations, companies, businesses, and other entities, including public service such as county or school. Generally speaking, work on behalf of HCA or DOH is through a contract. Often it's a competitively bid contract and awarded that way. So we see signs of business culture here, compliance, collaboration, health equity, and mission-driven health efforts. Now we will look at our state's Department of Education, which is OSPI. Unlike other state agencies, OSPI's leadership role is not appointed, it is elected. And not only is our superintendent responsible for overseeing education in our state, but that person is also directly responsible to the constituency of Washington voters. OSPI's current superintendent is Chris Reichdahl, who was elected by voters and took office in 2017. Looking at education's regional networks, we have educational service districts, or ESDs. ESDs are board governed and support schools in a variety of ways. We'll talk more about them later. But at the local level, school boards are the governing bodies. They are comprised of publicly elected officials who govern the school district. It's important to note that school boards are decision-making and governing bodies. They're related but separate from the state and regional levels. Generally speaking, education is managed through a network. It engages various board members, associations, leaders, families, and educators. Regarding things like contracts, they do exist in our field, but more often we use memorandums of agreement or MOUs and something called a consolidated services agreement. So this distinction kind of reveals the value we have around cooperation and flexibility. Generally, the underlying organizational culture here is one of dynamic structures, collaboration, vision, mission, and mutual reliance. Putting all this together, here are the main takeaways. Different agencies enter the work through different doors. Sometimes they enter through competitive awards, sometimes through delegation, and sometimes through public elections. Within our projects are many different agency cultures and approaches. There are times some stakeholders bring an emphasis on monitoring and compliance. Other times it might be a focus on collaborative improvement. I would say that overall, mostly it's a bit of both. Let's just remember that some of us came here bidding for the work or applying as a grantee, and others were assigned or delegated the work, or maybe they were asked to share an initiative only as like a passive recipient. So we don't all come to the work in the same ways or through the same doors. One example I can give is decision-making, right? We can think back about our respective agencies, and is it done by leadership or is it done by an elected board? Is decision-making top-down or is it lateral? Is it directive or independent? All of these things telegraph into how we connect and help achieve our shared goals. The takeaway, if you feel like the people you're trying to work with just don't get it, or they're challenging to connect with, let's keep in mind that our cultures and structures probably are playing into this. We can talk more about that in a little bit. This next piece is directly from coalition coordinator feedback in CPWI. The coordinators really wanted to know what is happening at the top levels to encourage schools to work with CPWI communities. I have to say this is the perfect question for our topic today. The short answer is schools are operated by local boards and local leaders, and that is the top level. They make decisions on whether or not programming, curricula, and services are feasible in their buildings, and that calculation may change from year to year, depending on things like funding or room, things that the school is focusing on to make basic education happen. So OSPI promotes CPWI and other programs However, our governance structure is not top-down when it comes to local relationships. It's not directive. So OSPI encourages the ESDs and schools to apply for CPWI and to participate in coalitions. We do not, however, imply that participation is required, as that's just not OSPI's role or relationship that we have with the field. When it comes to directly engaging schools and strategies and coalitions, we would see that as a community level problem of practice. Unlike many state agencies, OSPI is a semi-regulatory and support agency. Our leader is an elected leader and serves as an elected official. Both ESDs and schools have their own local governance structures. Some things are required across all three entities by the federal government. In Washington, local school districts have a great amount of decision-making authority over how their districts operate. The state often lays the foundation and then provides districts with the flexibility to meet the needs of their own locales. Washington state is unique because it's a local control state and local districts have a lot of power. The local control means that we have state level minimum requirements. State and federal policies influence the academic programming, structure, and operation of Washington public schools. But as we said, each of the roughly 300 Washington public schools is governed by its own publicly elected members. So those folks are the school boards, right? The school boards follow state guidance, but they often make independent decisions about their operations and policies and procedures in the schools. And fun fact, they're not required to get approval or consent from OSPI or the ESDs regarding that. So at the local level, this is kind of the decision-making we see. The board decides where they spend money and how to allocate funds, what curriculum they're going to do, and the variety of services and programs to provide that are in addition to those required state minimums. So though governing bodies, the board must adhere to some state law and state board requirements. Nevertheless, we want to note that there is a world of discretion and decision-making that occurs at the local level, right? The school board is responsible to drive such decisions and district leadership assists. Basically, school boards adopt the rules and determine implementation of them. So as a state agency, OSPI operates in a different relationship to schools than other state agencies might operate with their respective regional or local partners. Sometimes it seems that advocates and stakeholders believe OSPI should just make the schools do it, but that's not the role of OSPI nor the ESDs. The structure of public education in Washington is more laterally supportive than hierarchical or top-down. Most of our work is through cooperative agreements and not through competitive contracts. We can break down each of these levels real quick. The state role is to provide guidance, direction, and inform scope. The regional role is to support implementation of major education initiatives. And the local role is to ensure basic education and directly serve students and families. And when we work together, that's what we see for our public education system, is all these pieces trying to help kids achieve that adulting and basic education. One CPWI coordinator said the following: "We need you to keep us in the loop on school level programs, interventions, policies, and struggles." So this is one of the key reasons that partnering with OSPI and ESDs can be really important. We are able to summarize issues that impact schools broadly. The one role of OSPI and ESDs is to promote common understanding. OSPI can provide a big state or big picture summary, while ESDs can support more targeted and more regional perspective. Our strength is that we can offer insight for achieving those shared goals that are driven by your valuable grants, opportunities, and initiatives. So coming to OSPI or ESDs early in a process really helps things go smoothly in the long term. Even though we've emphasized district local control, districts often look across to their peers in other districts, and they look to the state and ESDs to get a sense of common effort or alignment. And let's talk policy for a bit, because I know that this is a topic that many of you are interested in. So strategies to improve or change school policy really need to be vetted by educational partners. I hate to say this, but sometimes mission can blind us to practicality and application. When it comes to school policy, it is a standalone field and requires thorough understanding to be effective. Additionally, policies are ever shifting at the local and state level, and we need our partners to know that each policy change amounts to a procedure change too. Basically, what I want you to know is it's a cascade of events. Once a policy is identified for a change, it follows that the supports will be needed, and as policy shifts, there are resources and activities to be put into practice right down to the building level when we work with kids. Furthermore, when it comes to working with schools, coalition coordinators asked, how do we interact and engage? How do we navigate school red tape? I need you to know that you're often doing all the right things. The basics of partnerships start with outreach, but the hard part is finding what's meaningful for the person or entity that you want to collaborate with. This is just a start, but as the Prevention Intervention Services Program Supervisor, I can encourage community partners doing this work to think about these things. First is trying to shift your perspective and understand it from education's lens. There's a lot going on behind the scenes just to take care of basic education and school systems. So the more that you can put a foot in our world, the more you'll be able to, I think, help speak our language. Also, we want you to think about who might be best situated to implement the kind of change you're hoping to see. Sometimes it's our outside partners, sometimes it's internal partners. There's only strength to be gained from partnering together in that work, but being mindful that it does take collaboration. Please think about the impact any kind of change or initiative has on all students in all situations. OSPI would say that public education serves all kids. And what that means is that it doesn't matter what needs the student has, whether they're language or learning related, or what kind of extra supports are required. We give those all to students. So any kind of policies or practice change need to be considered for all students across all situations. And lastly, we want to encourage you to think about including the ESDs. They serve regional and have a lot of perspective to bring in terms of planning and implementation. Just so you know, on the slide, if you look to the left, you'll see the interactive lesson. And in the chat box, you should be able to get a link for the NERN Hexagon tool if you'd like more information than we're going to share today. So to fully assess for suitability and overall preparedness, we're proposing that the NERN Hexagon tool be considered. The Hexagon tool is used to determine fit and feasibility for implementation of a program, but we offer that it could be used for approaching policy efforts too. The thing about the Hexagon tool is it's a tool to identify a need and also routes for change. So we'll take a little bit closer look at how it might be applied to education policy efforts and your efforts as health providers. So we'll go portion by portion here, and we'll start with evidence. So guiding questions under evidence sound like, are there research data available to demonstrate this approach? Under what conditions was the evidence developed? What outcomes are expected if this policy or practice is implemented? Has this been done in similar settings? And how might this impact culturally and linguistically diverse populations? Next segment of the tool covers supports. Is there a qualified expert who can help with implementation? Are the resources needed to make this change readily available, including identifying resources and associated costs? What level of buy-in exists? And do leaders and decision makers support this change? Which brings us to usability. Our guiding questions are, is the policy change clearly defined? And for whom is it intended? Is each core feature of the policy operationalized? And what do we know about the reasons previous policies were successful or unsuccessful? The next three, we'll start off with need, then we'll go fit through capacity. So needs guiding questions are, who will this policy impact? What are the needs of this population? How were the needs of the population determined? How do affected individuals perceive their need? And what do they believe will be helpful? Lastly, if the policy is implemented, what can potentially change for students, families, and staff? For fit, how does the policy fit with the priorities of the school? What other policies or procedures currently being implemented will intersect with this policy? And how does this policy fit with the staff and school culture? Which leads us to the last component of the NERN Hexagon tool, which is capacity. Are there resources to support the costs associated with this policy change? What are the staffing requirements for the policy or practice changes? And what administrative practices must be developed or refined to support the proposed change? Will the current communication and referral systems responsively match with those impacted, including families? Policy change is only one example of working with schools and ESDs, but it's a really popular one. Whether policy or maybe it's getting a program or curriculum into schools or any other major change, we really need to ask who is best positioned for this work, which leads us to the shoulder-to-shoulder work with educators directly. We want to know who has relationships with school decision makers. Is pursuing a school change within your reach or your team's reach? Can you complete the Hexagon implementation tool before any major work begins or gets assigned? And lastly, do you have financial resources that the school can use to help support them in this effort? So prior to any school-related work, it's critical to use the Hexagon tool or something very similar. It's going to reveal readiness for change, and it's going to reveal the cost benefit from the school's perspective. So the takeaway here is if active implementation partnership is your goal, then the tool and the school must join you in this effort. Education is really full of complexity, right? Like, please know, though, that the education field does not expect our health partners to lead policy or other work in schools. Yet, if you choose to initiate change, we got to let you know that schools expect high collaboration. If you're pursuing education policy or practice change to just check a box or meet a deliverable, we're asking you to kind of reassess that process. If health partners or coalitions engage in this work, it needs to be shoulder to shoulder with education leaders and champions. Specifically, you wanted to know about strategies that can help you with district relationships. I want you to know I did my homework on this, and I really wish that there was one easy answer, but the best I could do was narrow it down to about 4 key things. So before I share them with you, I got to reiterate, though, that districts are dynamic. Each one is different in how receptive it is, how flexible it is, and what its unique priorities are. So that being said, here are some tips. 1, please include us earlier. When you have ideas, share way in advance of your timeline if you can. A school needs time to adjust its systems and prepare staff and space for anything you might want to introduce. Just like you do strategic planning, so do schools. Your awesome ideas might require a building or district to hustle and make unanticipated changes. I'm going to tell you, they're changes that are probably the school is happy to make, but they just need a heads up. And as much buffer time as you can give us, the better. Contribute resources and funding. So programs and proposals usually have a cost to them. Schools can't often shoulder it alone. So contributing funding is key. Even when you bring a program like for free or no cost, there might be staff time or sustainability costs and other things that the school will consider that they think that they're going to have to pay for. So knowing that ahead of time and coming in with some funding can be very helpful. 3 would be to study changes in the field of education. Basically, this just helps your proposals be in line with school priorities, right? It means being able to share how your work matters for the education setting. We're not just talking prevention outcomes or prevention talking points. What we're talking about is bringing it home big picture with the language and frameworks that occur naturally in education to the degree that you can. Be prepared for no thank you. A school partner may simply say no or not now. I guess it's an uncomfortable truth that some initiatives will be turned away or asked to compromise, which is why the earlier getting assessment for readiness and capacity, those things are all so critical. This is a gentle reminder that in the school district's decision to pursue or not pursue outside support grants, OSPI doesn't mandate or make a district take on initiatives that are outside the realm of basic education, although we do support and promote programs to do so. So lending to all of this, the ESDs are excellent guides, right? They serve regionally, and that's the difference. They're going to have perspective on a location's readiness. They're going to have perspective on the key partners or school staff to engage with. And they also know the history regarding what's worked and what hasn't in the past. So ESDs have existing networks and high leverage abilities we can tap into. I'm going to note here that contracting for ESD services might be something to consider when you're planning and budgeting for work in education settings. Our next segment, right, as mentioned, ESDs can be a really valuable partner, and we're going to spend some more time on ESDs and talk about what they are and what they do. As we continue to dive a little bit deeper into ESDs, we wanted to show this short video. Let's go ahead and start the video.
Have you heard about educational service districts?
No. What are they?
ESDs assure that all schools across the state, no matter size or location, receive the same quality services.
Wow.
ESDs save schools money,
I like that.
and they also help kids be ready for kindergarten. Let Robin tell you.
When he was 2, I think he said like 4 words or 3. He didn't say anything.
Robin enrolled Savon 2 years ago in ECAP, a comprehensive preschool program for income-eligible families, ensuring that all kids are ready for kindergarten.
Do you know how to spell stop?
S-T-O-P.
He is now where he needs to be. It's been amazing.
Do ESDs help older kids who might be struggling?
Yes, meet Hannah. She's a teen mom who has turned her life around, thanks to ESD's Education Advocate Program.
I was skipping school and doing drugs. I was court-ordered to go to transition school. That's where I met Kim. She told me that I had the potential and motivated me.
Today, Hannah's back in high school and plans to attend a local community college.
That's great.
Schools really love what we can do for them, and we save them money.
It's simple. We could not provide the level of services that we do for our students without the ESD. They're phenomenal, they're highly skilled, and they're very positive in terms of helping school districts.
How does this work?
There are 9 regional educational service districts across the state, and your local ESD is customized for your students' and schools' needs. Let's look at some. There are early education programs and special education programs. There's math, science, English, and language arts initiatives. There are drug and alcohol prevention programs, dropout prevention, and school accreditation.
School accreditation? What's that?
ESDs offer school districts external accreditation of their high schools, with research-based improvement plans that help ensure that high schools are meeting top quality standards across the state of Washington.
Wow, that's going to help every student do better.
We do a lot for schools and students. I just mentioned a few of them. School districts would be hard-pressed to pay for many of these programs on their own. ESDs manage cooperatives, provide services and programs that spread the cost evenly, assuring that all schools receive equal services, no matter where they are.
Well, that's only fair.
Not only that, we save schools money. For every $1 of state allocation, ESDs return an average of $53 in services. That's $246 per student each year.
So, there are these 9 educational service districts across the state that help schools save money and help kids do better in school?
I think you've got it.
Where do I find out more about ESDs?
The Association of Educational Service Districts. At www.aesd-wa.org.
I think I really learned something.
So it's a little bit of a commercial, but the reason we wanted to showcase that video for you is because it gives you a sense of just, again, the broad spectrum of services that go into education in general, let alone the kind of scaffolding and supports that exist through an ESD. The summary here is that ESDs are designed to support schools. Their entire purpose is to cooperate and support schools through training and services. Getting back to the relationship between OSPI, ESDs, and schools, I wanted to highlight kind of the formalized partnerships that exist. For instance, OSPI, ESDs, one example is the Coordinated Services Agreement, and those exist between OSPI and the Association of ESDs. And that agreement really showcases the culture we have of working together and laterally in education. So to get a clear sense of what I'm talking about, I'm actually going to read aloud some of the language that's memorialized in the agreement. It says that OSPI and ESD leadership have come together to establish a coordinated partnership. Inherent with the ESD state network is the commitment for ESDs to support one another and within each region to serve the state. This commitment to improving statewide coordination, communication, and alignment of initiatives represents a deep belief that investing and maintaining a functioning partnership is critical to supporting all 295 school districts. Again, that's the kind of language we have in our formal agreements together because we just really value that lateral network of supports. And we really want you to feel informed so that you can participate and be our partner in that work. Going deeper into this content, here to tell us more about what those supports at the ESD look like, specifically with a focus on behavioral health and prevention intervention, is our guest presenter, Joy Lyons. Joy comes to us from ESD 112 in Southwest Washington, where she serves as the Prevention and Youth Services Manager, and she oversees the Student Assistance Program. Also worth noting is that before Joy came to the ESD, she was a CPWI Coalition Coordinator. Joy served in education for about 20 years, and she spent 8 at ESD 112. So thanks for being with us, Joy.
Thank you for inviting me. It is such an honor. I am super excited to be here today to share specifically a lot of the work that we do at ESD 112 in prevention and youth services. And before I dig into what we do specifically at our ESD, I wanted to start with the map. So this is our ESD 112 map, and you saw in the video the state, and this brings you down to our Southwest Washington region. And as you can see on the map, we have 30 school districts, and it spans 6 counties. So we're all the way on the west, we're all the way up in Ocean Beach, and then all the way to the east, up the beautiful Columbia River Gorge into Klickitat County. And so we're pretty big, and we serve a lot of different regions in a lot of programs, as you saw in that video. Our programs in prevention and youth services, and that's my specific program within our ESD 112, are dedicated to serving communities to maintain healthy, supportive environments. And as you can see on this slide, we have 8 specific programs. And it was very exciting to see that video because one of them was highlighted, the educational advocacy program. So you got to hear about Hannah and some of the things that we do within our specific program. And as you can see on the list, there's a few others. We have our Truancy Project, we have Summer Works, we have behavioral health, and that is new. As of 2019, our ESD recently received our behavioral health treatment license to provide substance use and mental health treatment services in schools. And we are very excited about being able to fill the gaps in many of our small, very rural communities that may not have these services in place. More to come on that. What I'm going to talk mostly about today is our community prevention projects, which is one large program, and also the student assistance program. So this page is our homepage for the Prevent Coalition. And that was the coalition I had the honor of being the coordinator for several years before entering into this position. And as you can see, the Prevent Coalition, you may not know, it started in 2007 as a drug-free communities prevent coalition, and now is funded through Department of Health marijuana and tobacco grants, and as well as a Healthcare Authority state opioid prevention grant. In addition to Prevent Coalition, which actually has 4 different staff, we have 2 coalition coordinators and 2 specialists that are doing all of this work. Our ESD, Prevention and Youth Services, also is a fiscal agent for 5 different CPWI coalitions and 1 drug-free communities coalition. So we're pretty vast in the work that we do under our community prevention work.
I want to interrupt and just flag for folks that when I think of ESDs for schools, it's like consolidated, a hub, a cooperative of services. But I'm seeing you guys as an ESD function that way also for some of our health partners, right? So whether funding's coming in from DOH or DVHR or federal sources or local sources, you're weaving it together to really maximize, I think, for prevention and intervention efforts.
Absolutely. And again, all of this community prevention work is grant funded. And I think the video speaks to how important it is that we are able to bring resources specifically to communities that may not have it. And we collaborate and we're able to support lots of different communities based on our regional approach. So thank you for bringing that up. What I'd love to do is share that Prevent recently received a statewide Department of Health grant, so it's statewide, to address marijuana prevention in regional or in rural communities. And if you live in rural communities throughout our state, we do encourage you to get involved. It's very exciting, and we have our kickoff meeting next week. It's the very first meeting led by the coordinator, Christopher Belle-Isle. And we need to hear from you because that is the goal, is to support our rural communities. And we know that we have tools and amazing resources and are excited to be able to partner with you and work together. And this slide, I just wanted to include because it really shows some of the outputs that Prevent has been able to achieve over just this last year. We were able to provide 17 different trainings for free to community members. We published 3 different toolkits, held 32 key leader meetings, and collected almost 8,000 pounds of drugs in our regional drug take-back program. So in addition to Prevent and the website that I showed earlier, we also have Youth Now, which is an initiative of Prevent, and it includes a separate website that is designed by youth and for youth. So hopefully you all see some very youth-friendly images that have been designed specifically to provide resources to community members that are doing prevention. So these can be used in schools, as well as from parents' lens or youth in the community. The strategy is to change the conversation about how we speak about substances. Instead of talking at youth about their choices, we talk with them through their own language. And so, as I said, these tools can be used by schools, and adults that can access the materials to use with students. An example on the bottom is Cannabis Conversations, which is a toolkit to be able to talk with youth about marijuana now that it's legal. And the tool on the right is Friend to Friend, which is created specifically by students in our community around how do they talk to peers around concerns if they have a friend who might be using marijuana. So these resources, they're all on our website, they're free. There's a lot of materials, and we encourage you to take a look and maybe even sign up for our monthly newsletter that has lots of new info.
The rural prevention effort is statewide, so no matter where you're at in the state, you can join in on that project. In addition, what I'm hearing you say here, Joy, is that although these resources were developed in ESD 112, that anybody in the state can use them. So the ESD is really amplifying, taking funds in, using their prevention efforts to make things available for folks no matter where they might be.
Absolutely, and that's actually it reminds me to highlight on this Youth Now page, there is a tab that directs specifically for schools, and there's a whole page that was designed, and yeah, we can't click on it, but that's where you find it. A whole page for youth vaping materials for specifically for schools. We encourage you, check it out. It's very current. We have a staff dedicated to making sure it's updated and current. So check it out. It's got great materials.
First question, it says, did you say that ESD 112 is a fiscal agent for 5 CPWI community coalitions?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And the next question is, how are the rural communities defined for the Rural Prevention Coalition?
Oh, that's a great question. And I would like to, so how are the rural communities defined? We are in the process right now of mapping the rural communities to define, to make that decision. And that's a great question. I don't have the exact answer because we're still in that, the grant was just awarded, like literally a month ago. I know that our staff is really making sure to listen to the community, which is why we have this kickoff meeting. And I'm sure if you're interested, you will answer that question next week. Thank you for asking. Okay, so this shows where our student assistance professionals are in our region. And this map may look familiar to those of you in CPWI. I used their map and highlighted where because it's the same. Our student assistance professionals are the same as where the CPWI coalitions are. As you know, they are connected and very much in partnership. One important thing to note is that we do have a couple different communities that have more than one student assistance professional because they're larger communities. So West Vancouver, we have 2 different staff. And then in Washougal, we also have 2 different staff. The other piece that I'd like to say about our student assistance program is that we do have CPWI staff, but we also support districts that hire their own student assistance professionals. And they don't always use that same title, but in essence, they're doing prevention and intervention work. For example, Vancouver School District hires their own, and we support those staff and we work in collaboration and connection very much to work as a team.
When we think about ESDs and their roles, again, not only are you the direct implementer of student assistance program in these CPWI sites, but you're also kind of the technical assistance provider and coordinator of implementation across other school districts in your region. Each ESD is a little different, right? So we could look at another ESD and they might have student assistance program in their CPWI sites, and they might have placed student assistance professionals in 6 other districts that have nothing to do with that funding or that are funded by their own drug-free communities grant. So every ESD works to weave together in order to do these supports.
And the last thing is that we work in partnership with, we work hard to be creative to make sure that all the gaps are filled. And specifically in our region, we were able to secure some funding to get student assistance professionals in high schools that didn't have the funding to get to pay for their own, and they also didn't qualify for CPWI. So that's just another example that's not even in this presentation, but it's something that we do. So we're very aware of meeting all needs and working, again, back to your comments earlier, Mandy, around serving all students. These are just the CPWI grants, but we also work in lots of different districts to provide ideas, resources, and that's the other beauty of having the Prevent Coalition and Youth Now is there's resources that we can always drive other districts to if they don't have their own resources to hire their own or they're not eligible for CPWI.
I keep thinking of the ESD as that natural partner, right? It's like when people don't really know an answer, they always go to Google for it, right? Like it's so frequent that it's become its own verb to Google something. Yeah. And ESDs are kind of the same way, right? If a school's looking for something, generally speaking, they're going to check in with the ESD first in terms of their curation and library of services. We don't want to say that an ESD is the only location that schools go to, but they're certainly one of the priority stops, which is why the more we can blend our work together and have that centralized hub, the more likely it's going to get deployed easily and to the communities that might get skipped otherwise.
Yep, absolutely. So on that line, we really strive, one of our values is customer service with our districts, and we strive to maintain excellent customer service. And so while our student assistance professionals are hired by our ESD, we also very much value their integration into their school district, down to the fact that they get school district issued email addresses, and that we make sure that the school districts are a part of that hiring decision. When we are hiring, we do interviews at the school site with the principals, and that is a really important piece of the culture so that they can integrate into their buildings and become a part of their school staff. And just as coalitions are required to assess their community needs and then basically create programming based on that data, we do the same by really working. We pay attention to health use survey, and we also value those relationships within our schools. And I know I work hard to work closely with our principals and our superintendents to know what their needs are and be innovative to meet the needs within the scope of what our programs. You can see a picture of 3 middle school boys who participated in the Courtyard Connections Club during their lunchtime. It began as an idea from the music teacher for the students to play guitar during lunch. And the student assistance professional in that building decided that to assist with the program in order to get to know more students and also make very valuable connections in school. So when the program started, our staff shared that she thought that each student would just take turns and maybe play a little bit, but in their own spaces, but she was really surprised. They all started to play at the same time, and it just created this whole kind of organic process of the students working together and playing music. I love music, and it definitely resonated with me. So some asked if they could play, others wanted to share. The smiles were there. I mean, I just think this picture is so sweet. So the students said that they felt valued and safe to try new things. And the Courtyard Connection Club created a sense of community and belonging for the entire school. And this is just one small example, but I want to really share that this staff here saw an opportunity to make a connection and build rapport within her building, and she did it. The students were welcome, they felt included, and by being involved, this staff made the valuable connections with students that she probably never would have met otherwise. And we know through research and best practice that this approach works. So this example isn't unique to this specific school or our ESD alone. Staff all over the state are making connections with students to create cultures of caring and well-being. That's what prevention is. Staff in our student assistance program take the time to develop relationships with their administrators. As I shared earlier, the staff are doing this daily. They get to know their counselors, they form student support teams, they work hard to make sure they're doing prevention and intervention for the kids that need some extra support. One of the things that comes out of that hard work and that time that they put in is trust. And they earn trust with their school buildings, their teachers, the administrators. And when there's trust, then what happens is they're given some classroom time to do their required prevention education programs. And without that, it just doesn't happen. They do things like life skills or positive action, and they get in and they actually teach kids in classrooms. So our staff, they wear hats as teachers, and then they also wear hats as skill building coaches. When the teachers trust them, then they'll give them referrals for students that might show some needing some extra support. And so the continuum just happens. And I think I wanted to close with that trust because that's really the heart of our program. And we know that prevention programming takes time. We all know that. And this example is just a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of what our staff do, but it's so important and powerful. And so I'm honored to work with all of our partners in prevention, all the way from our OSPI and our healthcare authority and our schools and our coalitions. And I just want to say thank you for inviting me. And I think my very last slide is our tagline with Prevent, which is connection is the best prevention.
Denise says, are all 5 of the CPWI coalitions housed within one of the schools in the district, meaning the county's public health department isn't necessarily involved?
No. So the 5 CPWI coalitions that are fiscally managed within our ESD 112 are in different locations throughout. So if you go back to that map, maybe you could show that map again, Mandy, and I could point out where those 5 are. The CPWI that ESD fiscally manages is in Longview and Castle Rock and Stevenson Carson, Klickitat Lyle, and Central Vancouver, which is actually noted as Fort Vancouver. So those are the 5. And they are hired by the ESD. Yes, by the ESD. Oh, and I see a question about the youth-friendly site. That is youthnow.me. So it's www.youthnow.me.
Joy is representing one division of work within that ESD, so there's so much other programs that we didn't talk about, but wanted to highlight for you the work that felt most appropriate and like the closest fit for the partnerships you're probably going to be pursuing with schools and potentially ESDs. And I wanted to pull out that Jemtegaard, was that the right middle school? I'm not sure I said that right, but we talk a lot about social emotional wellness and social emotional learning, and it's food for thought on social emotional learning and protective factors, right? Because what we're seeing there are those protective factors in practice. It's not a curriculum, it's not a program, but it's the approach of our student assistance framework that helps that to unfold and to emerge in stronger ways. You know, early on in the webinar, we pulled out how social emotional learning is part of everything and integrated. So that's just another place where we can see that strong social connections and protective factors coming through.
Do you work with YEMPEP?
Yes, we do. YEMPEP. So ESD 112 has the YEMPEP grant within our region, and so Prevent Coalition has the YEMPEP grant as part of its funding.
Our closing point here is that education is a network and it's focused on students, and our application for basically all this massive information we just got today. Our top 3 considerations really are OSPI, ESDs, and schools collaborate laterally to serve students. Our focus is not top down. And you'll notice through Joy's examples that we really amplify whatever resources come our way. ESDs and schools have a customer service relationship, and they work together to serve students and families. And then together with OSPI, we're all working to serve towards basic education and beyond, inclusive of the whole child. And our third application point is that policy change requires a multifaceted approach with education insiders at the table. Working with education partners really requires getting relational. There's school interest, capacity, and engagement as vital. This includes school staff, school administrators, and school boards. So if working with schools, we really must work within the school setting and the school's guidance. They're building their rules, frankly. If the school doesn't have a sustainable resource, or if the initiative doesn't clearly align with their school priorities, the efforts might stall out, and we want to protect against that. So a reminder too that ESDs work on behalf of all of us to have strong school relationships. We can harvest some of their hard work. It's their frontline efforts that help us facilitate those really innovative behavioral health partnerships and services. What seems like slowness or caution might just be that schools or other education partners take time to evaluate for solutions. Just like with students in the field of education, demanding really doesn't work for us. Punitive approaches and strategies that are interpreted as coercive are probably going to fall flat. So this can lead to strained partnerships, or worse, a loss of a school partner. Schools have many objectives, and as we covered in the start or the beginning, because getting students ready for post-secondary experiences is really hard, massive work. We have to be pretty diligent in what we take on and when. Starting way upstream by sharing funding resources and engaging co-created efforts are going to contribute to success. Your goals, programming, or initiative are just one thing in the world of education. When it comes to substance use prevention, it's just one piece of a larger puzzle. So between math progress and science and technology mastery, being on time for graduation, and modifying content for students' language or learning needs, educators and schools, they have full plate. So though it might not seem like schools and education partners are always aiming for the mission of prevention programming, they are, in fact, because they're doing all they can to create environments that really foster engagement and a lot of hope in our learners. Schools must make hard choices about instructional hours, teachers' time, building rooms, who gets the room when, and what space gets used by who. So sometimes the barriers we see are simply our education partners working within their own constraints and environmental demands. Those are just a quick recap from all of the things we took on today. Let's take a moment and just kind of sit with all the information we got. I know this webinar team would love to hear how all of this material has landed for you.
We've got a question in the Q&A.
Great.
I know that ESDs play an important role in the Healthy Youth Survey implementation and analysis. Could you address how they could assist coalitions with this work?
So I think the best thing for a coalition to do is to connect with their ESD lead and ask that direct question, right? So whether it's through student assistance professionals or other program folks at the ESD, there might be some support for further analysis of HYS. There might be different avenues or pathways that, if the goal is to get the school more engaged with their own analysis in coordination with the coalition efforts, that the ESD is going to know kind of the back doors on how to do that, whether it's through school improvement planning or potentially another grant that the school has received or the ESD has received, that they can really, again, maximize all of those pathways. One of the things we like to say is there's no wrong door, right? Anything that gets us there. So not directly answer the question on exactly how ESDs can assist coalitions with that, but I would task your ESD with being able to respond. Joy, if you have any input, I'd love to hear from you.
Sure. I just saw another question came in. How should local health districts who have YEMPEP grants work with the ESDs? And that is a really great question. I don't know if you could answer that, Mandy, from a perspective, or if there's other ESDs on the call. I mean, I know that we have the YEMPEP grant in ESD 112, so it's hard for me to share based on what I know.
Yeah.
But I do think that our role is to is to really support our districts to make sure that they implement the Healthy Youth Survey. And so I think that sometimes that can be a support for our districts. And so if you're the YEMPEP grantee and you're wondering specifics around Health Use Survey, there's definitely one contact within each ESD that really takes that lead around Health Use Survey implementation. And it would be a good conversation to touch point, especially knowing this is a Health Use Survey year. An example this year, 2 years ago, is a lot of our school districts really needed some support around how to make sure their teachers understood the value of Health Use Survey. And so there's ways to partner where it can be a really creative way to give it some new life. Like Healthy Use Survey is really important. We want to make sure that teachers don't just see it as one more thing that they have to do.
The ESDs, their design, which we didn't get too far into, but they're kind of an interesting agency too. You want kind of additional services or have a need that you think the ESD can help with, bring some money to the table can go a long way. A couple $1,000s for a quick contract or MOU or project might be getting the schools to have more buy-in around using their HYS, or it might be having them work as strategy partners in further analysis. You know, through school improvement at OSPI, we have an entire regional network called the Data Improvement Network. So we work at OSPI with the ESDs, and we have a data network of ESD representatives, and they are challenged to look at various forms of data, one of which could be and is Healthy Use Survey, but we're also looking at CEDAR's data, other things that we're not going to get into in this webinar. Hopefully, you can kind of think about just asking for supports that you might not have known otherwise were a possibility or something that could exist. How should local health districts who have MPEP grants work with ESDs? As you can see, that there's just so many services and so many opportunities for intersection and collaboration and just amplifying existing efforts. It's worth reaching out to them and asking them that exact question, asking those ESD contacts, hey, you know, I just learned a little bit more about you than I knew before. I'm the coordinator for this grant. Where do you think we might be able to maximize our partnership? Or what would it cost if we wanted to do this? Or are there free resources that we can tap into through you? That's the start of a partnership. If you don't already have that going, that I highly suggest talking to the ESD directors. You know, we had a couple other prompts here. I think I've already heard actually from some folks about how this might get applied in your everyday work. I really want to appreciate our funders in this work. Besides OSPI and System School Improvement, the Healthcare Authority's Community Prevention Wellness Initiative has made this webinar possible through funding. I want to appreciate Joy Lyons as a representative of all ESDs and especially ESD 112. And thanks to Bonnie and Emily for all their support in making this webinar possible through facilitation. Lastly, I know folks have a really busy plate, so the fact that so many of you participated today speaks volumes about your dedication to working and collaborating with schools. So thank you so much for choosing to be here with your time.